Hi, I'm Tom Payton, Director and Publisher at Trinity University Press. Thank you for joining us for the Maverick Book Club, a quarterly series exploring the rich stories about Texas, especially our hometown of San Antonio. As a nonprofit cultural and educational publisher, we're committed to an evolving agenda of work that engages, questions, and brings us together productively as a community. And we hope you find that in this discussion. Nelson Wolff, Bayard County Judge and former San Antonio Mayor, has been an active participant in the city's political and business community for more than 6 decades. We at Trinity are proud to have published 2 books by Nelson, including his latest book, The Changing Face of San Antonio, which explores several transformative city and county initiatives that have emerged in the past 10 years or so: the Mission Reach expansion of the iconic Riverwalk, the renovation of the San Antonio Municipal Auditorium into the Tobin Center for the Performing Arts, the much needed expansion of the university health system, criminal justice reform, the city's efforts to become a tech leader in biomedicine, aerospace, and cybersecurity, and the creation of a pet project of his, for sure, Bibliotech, the country's first all-digital public library. Nelson has been such a strong force for creative, educational, and economic development in San Antonio, and recently announced that he was not running for re-election, which I'm sure we'll be talking about in light of his career this evening. We're joined for this discussion by Rick Casey, whose career spans 4 decades of award-winning journalism and reporting on San Antonio in particular. He was previously Metro columnist for the San Antonio Light and later the San Antonio Express News. Most recently, in recent years, he's worked with the Rivard Report, now the San Antonio Report. Tonight, he will lead us in a discussion with Wolff about his leadership in the changing face of San Antonio. Thank you for participating, Rick.
Well, thank you, Tom. I really appreciate Trinity University.
Thank you, Rick. Just one last note for everyone. You can order The Changing Face of San Antonio at our website, tupress.org, or by using the link in the chat screen that you'll see during the program. And you'll get a 20% discount by using promo code Maverick1, number 1, at checkout. And with that, I'll jump out and welcome Rick.
Well, thank you. That was a horrendous beginning for me to step on your sales line.
Oh, you're fine. Yeah, it's fine. It was a nice segue.
All right. Well, Nelson, it's great to see you. What I'd like to talk about tonight is pretty much what you've written about in your series of books about your time as county judge. And what I want to talk about is how you led a transformation of the county government, both in structure and in its agenda, in its goals. And I believe that you began and have spent at the beginning of the 21st century and have spent the first 20 years of it dragging Bexar County government into the 20th century. Another way of putting it is that you turned a county government that was basically had strayed little from its original small town culture into an urban county government, helping meet the challenges of a big city and its suburbs. So what I'd like to do is begin with having you tell us about the county government that you inherited in 2002.
Well, Rick, I came from the private sector. We had started a couple of companies and we're very successful. So I was used to running a pretty good sized company. I think we had 700 people working for us at Sun Harvest. And then being mayor, which is sort of a centralized system with a strong city manager and so-called weak mayor, unless you assert yourself. And then coming over, finding what I describe to the press as the weirdest form of government I've ever seen. It was built to be dysfunctional. It's almost like, hey, let's make a constitutional deal that would make county government dysfunctional, and let's pass legislation that would make it even more dysfunctional. I don't know whether they were thinking of that when they did it, but it sure as hell turned out that way. And but it took a good while, to try to bring in changes that would restructure county government and do it in a way that would allow us to have a little bit more of a meaningful voice in the community that we live in, over 2 million people in Bexar County now.
Well, let's talk a bit more about what made it so dysfunctional. You had, I don't know how many dozens of people in the courthouse who all thought they were king because all of them had only to relate to the voters. They didn't, they had to worry about you a little bit on their budget, but not all that much. It was a whole bunch of, it was like medieval Europe, a whole bunch of little monarchies and duchies.
Yeah, there was, I don't even know what the count is offhand. 50 or so judges. You got the sheriff elected, the district attorney elected, even election county clerk and district clerk, which is kind of weird also. And so it's functionally spread out. And like what former Judge Cindy Taylor Pryor told me when I came in, county government has a wonderful system of checks and balance, but try to find credibility or find who's responsible for what and why something fails or doesn't fail is almost impossible.
Uh-huh.
And to compound what was structurally formed for county governments, the commissioner's court had like 10 executives reporting to them. So 10 reporting to 5. I mean, you're talking about crooked, messed up circuits.
Uh-huh.
So it was very, very frustrating at first.
Well, so what did you do and how much resistance, what kind of resistance did you meet in doing it?
Well, the first thing I did at the time I came in, Seth Mitchell was my chief of staff and had been with the county a good while. So the first thing I did was go with him and go to the court and ask them to have my chief of staff act as sort of a coordinator between all the different things that were going on. And then the second thing, and kind of, coming roughly at the same time, was getting rid of a lot of executives that were terrible. We had a worn out budget director, a person heading up the public works that was totally chaotic. We had a guy doing innovation and technology that was still not moving forward on their issues. So we had a great number of weaknesses within the structure of Bexar County. And so slowly but surely, I made efforts to get rid of them. I would call them into the office and just say, seems to me like this is a good time for you to retire. And it worked most of the time, although 1 or 2 of them fought back and we had to go to a commissioner's court and a couple of 3-2 votes to change them. So little by little, I think we began to get some competent people in there running it. And we still had difficulties controlling, or not controlling, I shouldn't say that, working with all the elected officials. And I was able to get finally cohesion on the commissioner's court to really try to control them through our budget and punish them if we felt they needed punished.
Uh-huh.
And I know at one point I fired every one of the magistrate judges by just not funding them anymore.
You mentioned that as mayor, it was a weak mayor system unless you asserted yourself, and you had some experience. I recall one time when you called an early morning meeting of the board of the city's work training program and thanked them for their service and told them that they'd all been removed. And on the way out, I asked you if you had the authority to do that, and you said, "I don't know, we'll find out."
Well, I technically did not have the authority, but they thought I did. And so most all of them resigned, and the few that didn't, we came back and got the support with the council at that time to restructure the board, a smaller board, and appoint new members. But the mayor, the title of mayor in itself is a very powerful position when you think of mayor. when you think of county judge, you wonder what the hell he is, you know? You don't have any idea who in the hell you're talking about as county judge, but you do respect the title of mayor, the title of mayor. And so if you're able to use it and use it to enhance your power, then people are going to respond to that. County judge.
Was there an ethic in the county government where they understood that the county judge was the countywide elected head of the legislative function of the county? And did you get any respect just for that reality?
Maybe some, but you know, when you talk about the legislature, and of course I served there, House and Senate, you would have every department had lobbyists out there, you know, trying to get special legislation, either for a judge to create another court or some kind of a protected fund for the sheriff's office, or so they were always up there getting legislation that would help their particular office. And the constables were the worst. They had probably one of the strongest lobbying groups up there. And
well, I think a lot of people don't know what the constables do, just like the county judge.
Well, constitutionally, there's 4 of them, and they're elected in separate districts. But we had 5. You can create more, and we had 5 when I got there. And so I said, well, let's at least get rid of one. But it took me a year and a half to get rid of him. And he sued us, and it cost $1 million in legal fees. So it took a good 4 years just to get back the legal fees from getting rid of his position. They are elected, they're allowed to carry guns, they got law enforcement, but quite frankly, everything they do, the sheriff could be doing. And so it's, you know, it's another complication of county government. And as you well know, we've had some that were a little bit crazy.
So what you set up a new structure and somewhat modeled on City Hall.
You know, trying to get closer to the more of what I would call a centralized management. But quite frankly, I was never able to get completely there till 2009, when my son was elected to the Commissioner's Court, Kevin Wolff, and he had come from the private sector, had worked for some large corporations in New York and all around the United States and here. So he had a good understanding of how things should be structured. And then we were able to convince Commissioner Paul Elizondo, he was the 3rd key one, to agree to do a county manager. And we had at the time David Smith, who had gained some credibility as budget director. So that really came in very handy in terms of having the right votes. And so since then, David Smith's been county manager, and he's been able to do audits of elected officials. We've done, and then everybody reports to him. And so we have somewhat of a much more closer system. I say closer, but still far away from the city. But it certainly began to get a little bit more of a centralized management of the county.
So you had somebody who came to work every day. His job was to see how well things were running and help come to you with ideas about how to deal with the parts that weren't running well.
And other thing we did over the years, even before David, was we created a lot of new departments that we never had before. When I got there, we didn't have an economic development department. We didn't even have a public information officer. We didn't have a criminal justice planning council. There was no therapeutic justice. There was nothing we were doing in the library. So we created a lot more activities that the county could do that they weren't doing before. And I think it gives it some credibility.
I want to mention to the people who are at the table with us here that we are open to questions, and you can use that on the little screen at the bottom of your screen. place where you can ask any questions. And we're not going to wait to the end for that. If we see some that look to be right for this, we'll go ahead and ask them. But Nelson, you also did, in addition to working on the structure and the culture, the management culture of the place, you basically changed the agenda. You changed the goals. You became, in the same way you were as a mayor, kind of a city builder as a county judge.
Yeah.
We can go through some of the many projects. There, perhaps the one that is to me the most symbolic is we used to have something called the Municipal Auditorium. Which had a long and sometimes wild history, but it belonged to the city. And all of a sudden, we have the county taking it over in order to turn it over to a nonprofit to run it, but raising $100 million of public money. And then the private sector came up with more to turn the Municipal Auditorium into the jewel it is today as the Tobin Center. Why did you decide to do that? The county, only when the city wasn't going to help the Spurs get their new arena, or it was dragging its feet on it, had the county been involved in anything like this before?
Well, what happened, we had a hotel, and I want to give a lot of credit to former County Judge Cindy Taylor Cryer, who, when there was a fight over the Spurs arena, she stole the basketball away from the city of San Antonio and got the votes to do it, and gave us a little slice of the hotel motel tax, about 1 3/4 cents. And so we were very conservative. We built the arena when I was there, where the Spurs play today, and we were very conservative. And by 2008, we built up a nice cushion of hotel motel money. And I made a couple of things that I completely failed at, trying to get a baseball team and trying to get a football team and running around, getting kicked around. And in the meantime, I started reading the legislation, and I found out that you could do a lot more things with that money than what we'd done before, because almost all the money has gone to professional sports complexes that are either to the convention center and stuff. And when I got to reading it, I found out you could do a lot more things.
There was language in there about economic development.
Yeah, and there was we did I think 13 regional sports parks. We did the Tobin Center, farming market. We did the river, and we did some improvements to the AT&T centers, about $414 million. And we went to the voters in 2000. Who get my years straight? 2008. Yeah, 8, and got it completed. Got it voted on. That same year, not too many people probably remember Buzzy Reeves, but he was a county judge back in the 60s. And the hospital system, voters turned down the funding that was necessary to build and operate the hospital. And so he had to go to the legislature, had to put together votes and get a commissioner's court on a 3-2 vote to overturn the voters. And so we were in desperate need of do some things to bring our hospital district up. And I decided that, hey, let's just vote on it and not try to take it to voters, because I know it'll fail. And so we did it, and we approved about $900 million to build the new state-of-the-art hospital, as well as the 6-story clinic downtown. And so that happened in 2018 also. 2008. So 2008 was a big, big turning point for county government, both at our hospital district and also with the what we passed in that $414 million that we passed. And so that was kind of where we really turned the corner, and it's pretty aggressive.
But this still was an incredibly new initiative for you to take on just a whole series of things that really are classified as city building. the San Pedro Creek downtown, the Mission
Yeah.
Ridge, the Performing Arts Center. You also, I think, economic development, you joined in giving tax breaks for the decade of downtown
Yes.
development.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, you got to give Mayor Castro huge credit for turning around the central city. Without him taking the lead and without him providing those incentives, you would not see this, what we see today in terms of what do we got, 10, 15,000 new housing units. And we helped on that, but he was the really change agent for that.
Just out of curiosity, City Hall, there's a feeling among maybe a majority of the council members that that was great, we've done it, but it's time to get back to the neighborhoods.
Yeah.
And we're seeing in the current, by the budget they've just passed, moving some money out of the central area. Are you seeing similar pressures in the county?
Well, maybe to some extent. I think what we've seen clearly is on the east side of San Antonio, a gentrification. I know that's a terrible word to a lot of people, but I believe in it very much, that if you don't mix low income people with high income people, you don't have them living together, you're doing nothing but putting poor people in a pocket and leaving them alone. I think that's so stupid that they don't want anybody else to move in there. Now, I know you got to take care of someone that's been displaced. I agree with that. You got to provide the housing for them. But to say you want to box all the poor in an area and not allow anybody to live in there that has some income, I think that's terrible. So that's changing on the east side. Same thing is happening on the south side. You go out, southwest, you go out Highway 90, just one house after another being built out there. Where we're missing and where we've not done as well as we're doing on the east side is the west side, near west side. And when you get further out on the west side, it's the fastest growing area in the county. But the near east side, near west side, we haven't made the strike marks that we really need to make there. And so there's been some efforts there, I think, to try to maybe do some good that we've done on the east side. So obviously I'm not in agreement with a lot of way people feel about the inner city.
Sure. Well, I want to, in your book, you focused to spend a good amount of time on the mission reach.
Yeah.
And I'd like you to talk a little bit about that, because it was very complex how you put that together.
Yeah.
I ended up with the San Antonio River Authority being in charge of the construction instead of who traditionally would have been, which is the U.S. Corps of Engineers.
Yes.
I think it'd be interesting for you to tell people
Well,
about.
what happened there when the voters approved 125 million. We needed more money than that. We needed 200 million. So the county commissioners approved another 75 million in bonds to supplement the 125 million. And Suzanne Scott was the director of the River Authority at that time. She had actually worked for the county before, so she had an understanding of the county. And we formed a really, really good partnership. And the Corps of Engineers did the first mile of the 8-mile mission reach. And it was very expensive and took a long, long time to do it. And finally, Suzanne played the key role along with the River Authority, because they have a good relationship with the Corps of Army Engineers, and said, let us have the project and we will get it done for a lot less money and we will get it done twice as fast.
Why were they able to do that?
Well, they've had a good relationship with the Corps of Army Engineers for some time. The River Authority has. And so they were our partner in it. And of course, we had help from our delegation and we all worked on it. But I give the River Authority the greatest credibility in getting that done. And so once that got done after that first mile, then with the River Authority under our contracts with them to build it, and we had Zachary do it south, and they did an incredible job. And we finished the next 7 miles almost is a little bit longer than what it took them to do 1 mile. So it worked out good. We were able to do it a lot less money. And it just was a tremendous, great project. But had we not put up the money and had we not done the partnership with the River Authority, that would have never got done.
One of the impressions I have, in addition to all these things you did, it seems like there's a real cultural change on the commissioner's court.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember when it was, A.J. Plow, who owned a voting machine company, and guess who got to use those voting machines? It was a pretty lethargic place. It was a place where you couldn't understand exactly what they did and couldn't figure out why they were paid about 300 times as much as the city council members.
Yeah.
Especially after districting, the council members were working a lot harder. But now you've got, a really interesting group of people on there. Talk about how that's happened.
You have, Rebecca Clay Flores was elected and beat Chico Rodriguez, and she comes with a different perspective, and we've got to really know each other very well. In fact, I was with her all this morning at the TechStop meeting, and she's a positive force. She, looks at things a little different. She's tough lady. I like her a lot. Then of course we had Trish, and that only lasted less than a year. And now we got Maria Lynn Bernard, who I appointed, and I'm hoping that she will get the nomination of the Republican Party. I think she's a solid member of the court, conservative and very solid, and I hope she will be able to serve beyond just this year. And then we got Justin, who I appointed 3 years ago, when Paul passed away, and he is very sharp and very good, and Tommy's a really bright guy. Sometimes I have a hard time keeping up with his thinking, but he's a bright guy. And positive force. So I think we got a good court. Whoever gets elected county judge, got two women on the court. So
there's some decent chance there's going to be a woman as county judge.
Elisa Chan? Who? Oh, you mean
county judge? Yeah.
Well, yeah, you might have a county judge. You got Ina Mahadas, and then you got Annalise, who's also running, and then you got Trish.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, you can end up with 3 women on the court and 2 guys, and nothing wrong with that either.
Yeah. One of the things I've really enjoyed about your books is that you do go into details on how things happen. And one of the things that has come up across to me is how much work goes into, like one that was the most intriguing was your, when you talked about how we came to get the Toyota plant here, in the company, and how there were a number of missteps and how we got by them. And some people wanted to go over and lobby them, and it was made clear by them that was not a good idea. But it just tells me all about the work that goes into it and all the meetings. I mean, as a newspaper columnist, it was great. The only meeting I was required to go to was the annual United Way meeting, and I found I could bribe my way out of that. I can't imagine going to as many meetings as you have.
Well, on the Toyota thing, the way it started, Mayor Ed Garza was mayor at the time, and he had this grand view of how he was going to change the south side of San Antonio into walkable neighborhoods and all the kind of things you'd want to see in urban development. So he was not supportive when it was Toyota was presented. He said he envisioned a bunch of smokestacks and running the environment. But he came around, and once he came around, but he was effective. So I spent all my time working on it. Dennis Cunha and I worked out, who was the representative for Toyota, who was the first American that was on their board. So we worked it and finally got it done. And Ed Garza was very helpful and very supportive after that initial smokestack stuff that he envisioned.
But at one point, he did want to go over to Toyota when those.
Yeah, he did, and they made it clear you don't go over there and lobby. If you've never been in a corporate structure, you don't know that. He had never been. You don't go over the head of the guy that's in charge of negotiating something. You go over his head, and you've made one damn bad enemy, and you made the organization mad. So you should never, ever go over the head of whoever they appointed.
I think that hurt Arkansas, didn't it?
It hurt Arkansas. It sure did. He was, I forgot he was running over there and tried to go in run around the people that were actually working the deal. And that's not a good idea. When you're dealing with a corporation, you just make them angry and it's just not a very smart thing to do.
But we had a lot of successes that you were able to write about. But I enjoyed in the current book, The Changing Face of San Antonio, when you wrote about one of your failures, which was your efforts to get the Miami baseball team to come to San Antonio. Tell us a little bit about that.
I wasted a lot of time on that one. I think that the representatives of major professional sports that come to you, I'm going to move. They're the handmaidens of the devil. Come in their fancy suits and their smooth talking. And I know when we hosted the fight for when I was mayor for Cesar Chavez and Don King, he was a devil. But we knew he was a devil, and he accepted the fact he was a devil. These guys don't let you know that they're really devils. and they try to trick you, and they put hopes in you. And of course, I'm a baseball nut.
Yeah.
And I spent 4 months fooling with that, and they all lied.
They were just using San Antonio as
just using us. You can count a number of them that used it. When Phil was trying to get the New Orleans Saints, all they did was use us.
Oakland was talking about it. Yeah. The Oakland Raiders were for
Oakland Raiders. I made a comment that they're all lying, and it got in the paperback in Oakland. They didn't like that. Of course, they were lying. It was the truth. So yeah, we've been used 3 or 4 times, and I was a culprit in the baseball.
Well, baseball though is tough. I remember there was a myth that Henry had promised baseball in the Alamo Dome. And I remember at the time when he was campaigning for it, he explained to me why there couldn't be baseball in San Antonio yet. And that was because of the economics between football and baseball. Football, you have 10 games a year, and you've got to get at least 30, 40,000 people out, but they're almost always on Sunday. They can draw from the whole region. People book a room to stay in a hotel coming up from the border or coming down from Austin. Baseball is 81 games a year, most of them on weeknights, and you got to get at least 30,000 out for each one of those. So you find that that's just a whole different.
It is different, but bottom line, Rick, the reason we fail is that we don't have a strong enough corporate structure here of headquarters. We just don't have it. And Major League Sports, they're a corporate game.
Yeah.
They got to advertise with them. They got to get naming rights. Right now, I don't even know who's going to do the naming for the AT&T Center. So far, they haven't said. But we don't have a lot of money for that. And, they buy the tickets. If you go to a game, you're there at the invitation of the corporation, or you work for the corporation, and maybe if you want a $25 ticket, you hold your nose and you go up higher in the stadium. So it's a corporate game, and we don't have the corporate structure to. We're doing good to handle one top-notch team, and that's the Spurs, and we want to do everything that we don't lose them. To hand that second one, you know, I thought we could do soccer. I think we could have done soccer, but they're a bunch of liars also.
I remember when there was some talk of bringing, I think at the point it was a football team in, and the Spurs were saying, "Oh, sure, bring them in," but I have a hard time believing that they really meant it.
It just probably didn't mean it.
Is that corporate?
But it's just
some of those corporations, football would have made more sense to spend their money in.
yeah, it's just until we get a better corporate structure, I think we're still a long way off from another. Like I say, soccer's a low end cost, and you could have done that. But when you talk about baseball and football, you know, those are big cost items, and we just don't have the corporate structure.
One of the other areas that you got into some controversy with, partly as mayor, I'm not sure how much as county judge, but you're a big supporter of programs like 1% for the Arts.
Yes.
Can you tell a story involving Robert Marbut and Roddy Simpson, my late colleague at Express News?
Yes.
Tell us about that.
Well, there was that period of time, I'm going to lose a little bit of track here, when Greenwich, what was that guy's name? And the speaker, Republican Speaker of the U.S. Congress, I'm saying his name wrong, I think. Anyway, they defunded a huge part of arts and, you know, attacked the National Endowment for Art. That filtered down here. I think Howard Peake was the mayor at that time, and they attacked all the local arts here, cut their budgets, and you know, it was just a bad situation. And so it took a good while for the city to turn that around, and then we've got very much involved in the arts, funding the arts ourselves from the county to help them. I'm a big believer in the arts. You know, when we built the new hospital, I think we have $9 million worth of art in just that one facility. So, and then we got art all along the San Pedro Creek. So I just think it's extremely important to a city, whether it's the performing arts or whether it's visual arts, that we support those efforts. And but we're past that period where they were denigrated and politicized. And
at least for now. I have to confess that I brought it up partly to tell a little story about Roddy. Roddy had written columns campaigning against the spending on the arts.
oh, yeah.
And one day I was driving up what was in Durango, and at the corner of South St. Mary's, there was a bumper sticker around one of the traffic poles. And it said, I think this is an adult audience we have with us today. It said, "Support the arts, get Roddy laid."
Get Roddy laid. He's too uptight.
And I told him nobody was looking out for me that way.
You know, it's interesting that, you know, you wrote a column for a long time, and you weren't bashful about kicking us around, and you popped us around pretty hard when we did that police contract. And Roddy was, I don't know, I guess you'd say maybe a little more conservative than you were or whatever, but he just loved to poke, and that kind of went off of Paul Thompson.
Paul Thompson did, yeah. I think
And,
Roddy, actually, if you read his early columns,
yeah.
they were deft and funny and pretty socially legal. He was an early supporter of the cops organization. But I think when Paul died, he felt like he needed to come in and do some work for Paul's audience.
When we did the building of the new city council chambers when I was mayor, he just attacked that. He said, you know, what do you call it, Sly Boots, who's trying to build you know, a very expensive city council, Versailles West, he called it, you know.
Right.
We had to hold off for about a year before we finally got it back up and got it passed, but he loved to get into those issues.
One of the things I appreciated about you was that when I wrote something you didn't like, you'd on occasion call me and use language you wouldn't use in front of a kindergarten. But you were very professional about it. You understood that that's part of the deal.
We had some good arguments back there, but that I think that should be the give and take between the media and particularly columnists. Yeah, that's good. Have a damn good argument. And I probably said a few curse words to you too, if I remember right.
You did.
But then you just move on from there. You go to the next one.
Yeah.
You don't ever hold any grudges, or you don't. You just have a good, solid argument.
Lila had a different style. If I wrote something negative about something she was involved in, I could almost set my clock. And shortly after 10 o'clock, the phone would ring and she'd say, "Rick, I'd like to visit with you about your column today."
I'm sure she did it in a nice way where you knew she meant it.
She was very effective in how she did it, but it was, she didn't use your language. Let's just put it that
She
way.
didn't use the language I use, I'm sure.
Well, your book does have a lot of really interesting stuff. But your books, I've enjoyed all of them. I think I did write in one review one time that you did need to keep your day job.
You don't make any money. I don't make any money off of all of them.
But
Whatever little bit there may be, it goes to charity. So I don't make any money off of any of them.
But you are getting ready to end your term. It's been really interesting, not just 20 years, but more like 30, because we had Cindy Cryer as a new kind of county judge. When she became county judge, she was a moderate Republican, but that fit right in because they weren't aggressive about taking care of urban needs.
No, but she did do that Spurs thing. And I thought that was a good turning point for the county, because everybody thought, including myself, I think I was chair of the chamber then, well, the county, I never get their act together. You got the rodeo out there, and you got the Coliseum Advisory Board, and you got the Commissioners Court, and they're all fighting with each other. And I think the city, they're always a little bit arrogant, felt like these crazy people over here will never get their act together. And Howard Pete, just kind of,
Let me ask you a question about that.
didn't think they were, but they got it together. And they did an incredible job.
Well, let me ask you that, correct? Because my reading of it was that it was funded with taxes, a little additional tax on hotel rooms and on rental cars. They were tourism taxes. And the tourism industry had long built up lobbying relationships and campaign contributions at City Hall, but they had never felt the need to do anything at the county. So the city council had pressures on them that the county commissioners court didn't have.
I think you're exactly right. I think you nailed it right down to it. I can remember calling Pat Kennedy, because I thought it ought to be downtown.
Pat Kennedy had La Mansion Hotel. Pat Kennedy had La Mansion Hotel.
Yeah, La Mansion. I remember calling him after where they said they were going to go to the county, and because they did not support using the hotel motel for it. I said, Pat, you got to turn that around. You got to say you'll support it if the city would do it and do it hotel motel. He said, nope, we're going to beat it. Well, they didn't beat it.
Yeah, well, some of your colleagues thought they were going to beat term limits too. So, didn't work either.
County prevailed, and Cindy did a great job, and they got it passed, and it's worked fine. I mean, we're doing, but now, what people don't know, since that was done, and since I've been there, we've used more money, but we built 350,000 square feet of exhibit space out there now. And we get conventions from all over coming over there where you do the walk-up ones. Rodeo has thrived, making millions and millions and more dollars for school scholarships. So we're very busy out there. It's not just the Spurs.
Well, it is, but Nelson, I have to say that one of Cindy's arguments was that it would cause economic development.
Yeah,
I asked her after hearing her pitch that to one group, what she meant, and she said, "Well, look at that new neighborhood of houses near the Alamo Dome." And I said, "Cindy, do you know how much the city admits to subsidizing each of those $65,000 houses?" And she said, "No, how much?" I said, $117,000 federal money to build those houses. We've seen that sports stadiums, there are certain circumstances, apparently, usually if they're downtown, but putting it out there has not done anything.
No, I think you're exactly right. I think we all hype that too much. That, oh, yeah, this is going to cause more economic development. The only time it ever does, I think, is when the developer is doing more than just a stadium. In other words, he has a comprehensive plan that if they built the stadium, they would build these things around it. You know, then I think you maybe get somewhere. Like if you go to Washington, D.C., where they built a new baseball stadium, there was nothing out there. But all these developers got together and, you know, made things happen around it, you know.
You know what does cause economic development? Parks. Parks. The parks. You're showing, I mean, we've seen that between the Mission Reach and the Museum Reach, Centennial River. It's now we've got one of the nation's longest linear water parks. And look at the development that has already happened to the north and is beginning to happen more and more down on the Mission Reach.
I think you're right about that. And when you say parks, I think the lineal parks, you know, have a big impact. I know we're already having a huge impact on San Pedro Creek. We had a tremendous impact on the San Antonio River economically, most of it going north. But yeah, and then you take all the you know, trails along the creeks, you know, that's caused people to want to live closer to the creek where they can get out there and ride their bike or jog. I think the lineal parks really, you know, really add to economic development along whatever corridor that might be.
So let's talk a little bit about the future. We don't have a whole lot of time. What are you running for next?
Nothing. I don't know what I'm going to do. I'm 80. I'll be 82.
Well, that makes you about the right age to run for president.
Yeah. I'll tell you what, sometimes I look at what they do up there and I'm thinking, you know, we're a hell of a lot smarter than they'll ever be. And that goes for the state also. But I'm 82, so I'm, you know, I just like to write, you know, and so I'll continue to do that. And I don't know what else I might do. You know, Tracy and I'll still keep active in the community. And, but yeah, I just felt like, you know, you ought to plan your exit and give people time to, you know, get good candidates and go out walking with your head up and not having someone carry you out, you know.
You know, it's been a remarkable 30 years. Cindy was in about 10 years, if I recall.
Yes, she was.
And without any serious Democratic opposition.
Mhm.
And you've been in for 20 years. And in my opinion, you haven't any serious Republican opposition.
I had a couple, you know, Rick Goff.
I said serious, Nelson.
And then I had the guy on the city council, Carlton Souls. I had some.
Well, Tommy challenged you, Tommy.
Well, that was the hardest year for me when Tommy, I just, you know, Tommy shook the hand of every Democrat in the world. Well, every Democrat here, let's put it that way.
I think he was in the birthing room for every birthing event. He
Yeah.
was amazing how he got around the community.
He put a $500,000.
That's what we're talking about.
Yeah, he put a $500,000 in his own campaign. Then I had him, and then I had Carlton Sauls. So that was you know, it was a Republican year in 2014. Every Democrat lost. I think I was about the only one counting.
It was Carlton. So, you know,
Yeah.
it was.
And so yeah, that was the hardest election, I guess. And you know, I don't know.
Well, you seem to have made it an office that's worth fighting for. Trish DeBerry is more of a high profile figure.
Yeah. Mhm.
I was kind of stunned when she decided to do it
Yeah.
after a very brief time on the commissioner's court, and then you know,
Yes.
with it looking very much like a Democratic county.
Surprised me when she did it. I think I had breakfast with her on Sunday morning before she announced on Monday, and pretty well told me she was going to do it and had a strategy and had a pathway to get there. And I said, well, if you think you do, then you go ahead and do it, but it surprised me. She did it. Surprised me.
I haven't seen much campaigning going on. I think I've received only one mailing yesterday.
Yeah, I got one just yesterday. I got one from Evelise and one from Nina. So I'm kind of worried about the turnout. We had a huge Democratic primary in 2018, and of course a big one in the presidential year. And I'm worried about you're going to have a very low vote, and I don't think it's ever good when you have very low votes. And we'll see. It's been very quiet as far as that I've been able to see.
It is. It's here, and I just did some research for a piece in tomorrow's Centennial Report and got some numbers out of Houston. And their early absentee ballot applications are about a third of what they were in 2018, the last gubernatorial year. And part of that is because of the new law that keeps that makes it a crime for the election department to send out unsolicited
elections. With the election, I was talking to
But
Jackie Callahan, who's our election administrator. I said, well, tell me, is it more Democrats not getting their voter approval for early ballot than it is Republicans? She said, yes. And I said, well, their strategy is working.
Yeah. It's strange times. Well, Nelson, it has been a pleasure as always, talking about not such old times, more recent ones.
Yeah.
What is the nature of your next book?
Oh, I'm working on a couple of projects. I have something here before too long.
You're not gonna tell us what the topic is.
Oh, it's getting close.
Okay. Well, I want to remind everybody that Trinity University Press has Nelson's books. You can go to their website. You can go to the local bookstores, the Twig, the Nowhere, and others, and get a copy of it. I've always found them intriguing. For those of us who are really deeply watching city government and county government, it just is a pleasure. And so I want to thank you for doing that, Nelson. I wish more people would. And with that,
well, thanks, Rick. Thanks for doing this, and thanks to Tom Payton and everybody at Trinity Press. I appreciate it.
okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, bye-bye.